Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzer.
And I am Miss Congeniality for episode 150 of the Oddcast. Welcome. Welcome, welcome everyone.
150 episodes,
Welcome. We're
guys.
so old. We're so old.
150 episodes is a
We get
lot.
to talk about our anniversary of 150 episodes while we talk about the Odyssey 30th anniversary. And also the episode we've been waiting so long for. So long.
You know,
so long.
Victoria,
Charlotte.
Victoria,
The OAC episode.
you know how lots of times when we're doing our reviews, I would do like an AIOC episode and then like another episode, and we usually try and either intentionally or unintentionally find some similar thread that connects these episodes tonally or thematically.
I have a similar thread, and that's the thing I was going to tell you about.
I was going to say these are the two most disparate episodes that we have ever picked to pair together before.
No, I have a similar thread between the two of them.
I knew you would.
And you're not going to believe what it is.
Probably not.
Look me in the eyes.
What are we talking about today, Victoria?
Look me in the... I already said what we're talking about today.
You didn't say Charlotte, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. What?
Both of these episodes made me cry. An Odyssey live show made me cry, and I can never take that back.
Was it the fidget spinner? Did you cry because of the fidget spinner?
No, you know what made me cry? Or should I wait to say it?
Let me guess. It was either at the beginning when they did all three wits. Yeah. My other thought was at the end when they were rehashing the end of Majin Guy and they started singing "Oh Come Let Us Adore Him," which in the original episode was sung by Tom, and now it's being sung by the
I was
Westcott sisters,
really bored by that point, and I was actually on Tumblr.
So was I.
Yeah, when all three wits came in, I totally did not expect that. I expected Chris to open it as she usually does, and I started crying. Yeah. And I was also blow drying my hair because I just got out of the shower. So I was also blow drying my tears at the same time. Yeah, it was really sad.
I found out this last week that Michael Vincent Jones, Gavin told this to everyone and no one else knew this, has a bath every single morning and blow dries his entire body dry instead of using a towel.
That is cursed.
Especially for someone.
Continue.
They literally pointed out it's like Veggie Tales. It's like, why do you have a hairdryer? You don't have any hair.
Okay, let's keep on talking about Odyssey.
Yeah. So Charlotte first, episode 844.
This episode made you cry, didn't it?
Episode 844.
Wait, Devin, this episode made you cry, didn't it?
I didn't cry. But boy,
I was so sure this one would make you cry.
Boy, howdy,
so sure.
Was this a sad episode? It was written by Phil Lawler. What happens in this fun Adventures in Odyssey, Victoria?
So in this episode, it starts off with Wilson and Whit, and they're playing a good old-fashioned game of chess.
Speed chess.
And then Whit and him are talking, and then during the conversation, Whit finds out that Wilson actually had cancer.
Maybe cancer.
And then dealt with that a couple weeks ago, and he never told anyone. Which, who does that? But I guess he does. But and then Whit understandably gets very upset. And then ditches. And then Renee comes in, and I'm like, I kind of wish this was Connie. And Connie and Eugene don't know, any of this stuff for all we know. And I want them to know about it really bad. Not that I didn't like Renee in this episode. I actually really liked her in this one. But, anyway, Wilson tells Renee all about Charlotte and the fact that, Whit hated Wilson, and he found out that Charlotte and him were engaged. Charlotte never went to Whit and Jenny's wedding. Which, wow. And she never went to Fiona's funeral. And that also surprised me greatly. And so they have a bit of a strained relationship. They love each other, but they have a bit of a strained relationship.
There was also that time when they were little and like Whit made her like go out into the woods and she almost starved and died.
Yeah, that too. Emily was mentioned like 3 times in this episode, and I got so jazzed about that because the day before I listened to this was the relationships episode recording that we did. Where we mentioned Emily a couple times.
I know.
It was just like great timing. It made me really happy.
Yeah, I did like.
Also, we were talking about in that episode how we don't have that much like Whit and Jenny from the Great Expectations era, and then we got more of that. And I was so pumped because you and I thought this episode would be like when Charlie and Whit were little. But it was like when Jenny was pregnant with Jana, and I got so pumped, and we got to hear baby Jerry, and it made me very emotional.
Keep saying what happens in the episode so I can talk about it.
Okay, and then Charlie dies, and right before she dies, because she has cancer, and they never get the chance to tell Whit and Jenny, Charlie and Wilson elope, even though Whit and Jenny were planning their wedding, and they were going to spend like all this money on it and everything. And because Charlie was dying, they eloped so they could have like as much time together being married as possible. And then Whit and Jenny got really mad. And then 2 weeks later, 2 weeks, Charlie died. And then Whit and Wilson made up at the funeral. And then Whit used all the funds that was going to like be for their wedding to help Wilson go into doing like missionary and ministry work and stuff. And that's the episode. And then present day, there's this stuff with Renee and her grandma and a hat, but like that pales in comparison to everything else that's going on, so I'm not really gonna mention it. And then like Whit and Wilson present day are just like, I'm sorry, and we need to work on things more and stuff. And then they're like, I love you and you're my brother, and they both say it, and then I start crying like even harder, and then it ends. See, I was so sure this episode was going to make you cry for the same reasons that that part with Loop and Taco made you cry in the Adventure Zone.
Obviously.
Because it was like so similar.
I was like, this is
to the
worse.
Point where I was just like, oh my gosh, whoever wrote this episode, they listened to the Adventure Zone. Also, I found out
this is worse than Stolen Century.
When I listened to this episode, I looked up who played Jenny's voice actress.
Yeah, it was Melissa Disney.
I heard Monica Disney in like Chris's wrap up,
Melissa
and I was
Disney.
just like, I always hear that name, but I never remember who she actually plays. And I looked up, I found out she plays young Jenny, and she plays Monica. And I was like, well, the Whitakers certainly have a type, don't they? And yeah, and I'm right. I am right.
That's true.
Yeah. I want Monica to come back to Odyssey.
I'm
She's
really
never going to though.
After No Friend Like an Old Friend, when we got to see like Whit and Wilson as children together and Jack, I was like, okay, this isn't like, we called pretty early on, like, well, I did because you weren't paying attention the first time you listened to it. I was like, okay, this is obviously Whit.
Leave me alone.
Ave is obviously Whit. Ave and Al.
I give this episode my undivided attention when I listen to it. I was like jumping up and down. I was so excited at some points. And by some points I realized what time period the story was taking place in, because that got me really jazzed. Also, Jenny was so on fire in this episode. I love her so much. Like when Charlie and Whit go their separate ways, she looks at Wilson and she's just like, why are Whitakers so stubborn? Oh my gosh, they're unbelievable. And then they both go like their separate ways, and they just have this moment of just like, oh my gosh,
when she sets
into?
Whit up and knocks him over for that, like, and how do you think she'll feel when you don't go to her wedding and stuff? And he's like, I hate you.
I was listening the entire time. I was just like, oh my gosh, Queen, I love her so much.
Yeah, so with No Friend Like an Old Friend, and we finally see, we're like, oh, here's this Wilson kid interacting with Whit and Jack. It was interesting then because we see like Wilson in modern times with Whit, and it's like, from what we saw them when they were young, clearly they didn't have like a great relationship with each other. Like, so I'm glad we finally get to understand how that dynamic evolved over time.
I thought like pretty quickly they would develop into being friends, but it was like, nah, man, they still hated each other for like a very long time.
Yeah, Whit was a very
Whit
angry...
was a grade A jerk in this episode, but I also can't believe that Charlotte didn't go to Fiona's funeral or Whit and Jenny's
From what
wedding.
they said, Fiona's funeral was not her fault.
I understand Fiona's funeral.
I know,
she was like really upset and in mourning and stuff. But like Whit and Jenny's wedding, she was just like touring the world on vacation, and she just like didn't come back in time for their wedding. And I was like, that's kind of sucky.
Yeah. So we start out, and Whit and Wilson are just... They're like, hey, remember our childhood? Yeah. Remember this person, this person, this person? And they just start firing off names. I was like, you're gonna give me a heart attack. I was like...
Remember Laszlo and Jack and Emily? And I was just like, stop, I can't breathe.
They named like 5 other new people. And I was like, oh. And then later...
And I was like, are they going to show up in those Whit books
Whit's like, remember this old adventure we had? And this adventure, and this adventure, this adventure? I'm like, okay, clearly this is like all just like... plugging set up for the Young Whit books, but like...
Okay, has Laszlo actually had any lines yet?
I don't think so.
Did he in the Journal of John Avery
Baker?
Wait,
yeah, he was, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, like, because if he hasn't had any lines yet, by this point, he needs some lines. So
Yeah,
he keeps
he was
on getting
in there.
name dropped.
Because he was bullying Jack, and then Whit was like...
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And
then they're like, hey, Whit, and he's just like, oh, that name, it's never gonna catch on.
Yeah.
That sounds like a loser.
So I'm like, oh, there's so many things being named at once, so much lore. And then we're also...
The deepest lore.
They're also playing speed chess at the same time, which is also just kind of a terrifying thing to experience, the fact that people can do that so quickly. I'm always terrified watching people play speed chess, by which I mean this and that one clip from Detroit. And just people like bam, 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 moving so fast. I thought it was really cool. In the web quest, they talked about how in the episode art right here, that they made sure that given all of the context we have from all the lines at the beginning of the episode, that the chessboard here is set up to be exactly where it was before Whit made his final move and then stomped off. Like they actually like arranged the board, figured out what it would be set up as to accommodate all the moves that they said when they were playing. So that was cool. It's a nice touch. So Wilson wants a hat, which they unfortunately included in the album art as well. Wilson has a hat, and as soon as Whit's like, what do you need
to see the picture.
Sorry?
Again. I said I need to see the picture.
Well, look
again.
at
I
it
can't
then.
remember what it looks like. No, that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing up the picture.
As soon as Wilson's like, I need to...
Oh.
Did you not look at it while you were listening?
Actually, I think I thought it was like something weird in the background.
So, yeah, Wilson's like, I need to stay out of the sun. I was like, Wilson has melanoma and he didn't tell Whit. And then...
He said, like, I need to stay out of the sun. I was like, oh, that's cool. You're sun sensitive. I know some people like that.
No, immediately I was like, he has skin cancer.
I did not figure it out.
And then fighting. Oh no, fighting. It's weird to see Whit being like present day angry and non-communicative like that. But I was like, it's clearly because there's bad blood over Charlie's death. And I was like, my predictions, Wilson hid something about it from Whit, so Whit didn't know it was coming. My prediction was Charlie was sick and Wilson didn't tell Whit, and Whit didn't know until he meant either Whit didn't get to say goodbye to her or didn't get as much time to say goodbye as he should have. Once again, dead on. Correct.
Yeah, I didn't figure out any of that. Your predictions don't count, though, because they have to be for future episodes. Not while you're in the episode.
So Wilson starts telling the story to Renee, and as soon as he sets up what part of the timeline this is happening, and I was like, young adult Whit post-marriage filling the timeline gaps.
And then trying to put Jerry to bed, and then Jerry crying when they're too loud, and I was just like,
He like sets up where it is so perfectly. He's like, they moved to Pasadena. The business is doing well. Jerry was 3 years old, and Jenny was pregnant with Jana and stuff. And our hometown was in Providence, so we were close to Durham, but they lived in Providence.
Is this the first time they've said how much older Jerry is than Jana?
I believe so. We knew pretty close because in a member of the family, they talk about how Jana was, I think, in middle school when Jerry died, and we hear, about Jerry's age and get an idea of that in Memories of Jerry, so you can kind of piece it together. But yeah,
Devin, this episode is deepest lore.
Okay,
it's so good. I don't know about you, but I'm still narrowing down my favorite episodes, and I was doing that a little bit while I was listening to Charlotte. And the entire time I had that episode on the back burner, and I was refusing to delete it. So what I did was I copied and pasted every single episode, and I went through the entire list, and that's why it took me so long. In fact, since we don't have to record it yet, I still have about 30 episodes left on the list that I have to pick between. But Charlotte's still on there. I refuse to take it off. This episode was so good. And I was kind of worried. I was thinking, what if Charlotte ends up being in my top 5, and I can't remember if we're doing the top 5 episode first or Charlotte first. And yeah.
Yeah, it's next episode. That's what that's going to be, because that is the episode that should have come out on our 5th year anniversary. So that's our celebration. It's counting down our favorite episodes of all time individually. Yep. So talk more about. So we'll repeat that at the end of the episode.
Starting with Whit's flop and ending with Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It hurt my heart so much to see Whit be so angry and unsupportive of his sister. He was it wasn't just oh, I'm hurt by the things that you've done. He was spiteful at her and stuff, and I don't support you or any of the things you do. And it's not just this. I think you're generally an irresponsible person, and you're flippant and shallow. And I was like, Whit, no, this is gonna hurt me so much. And then I was like, Charlotte, she became a Christian.
I didn't think Charlotte would die. I hoped she just in general wouldn't die, but I thought if she does die, she's not going to die for a long time, and I was very wrong.
Yeah, Charlotte too. I was like, okay, Whit's just, kind of being a prick about all of this, and Charlotte is like, I became a Christian 4 years ago, and I haven't even told you about that because that is how rusty our lines of communication are. And I was like, wow, you guys are bad siblings.
And this also explains, why
step-siblings, granted.
Charlie's never mentioned in any Whit episode or never appears or anything like that.
Yeah. And then we find out, like you said, Charlie wasn't at Fiona's funeral. And especially since Fiona was her birth mother, unlike Whit, I was like, that's really rough. And it wasn't her fault.
I forgot about that.
I can't imagine how rough that must have been on Charlie to find out, oh, we couldn't get a hold of you. Your mother has died and the funeral's already happened and you missed all of it and she didn't even know. That must have been, terrible. And that she also missed Whit and Jenny's wedding, and that was on her. And I was like, not building bridges here, Charlie.
Whit called Harold Dad.
Father.
Or father for the first time ever.
Apparently he just calls them Harold and Fiona, which was weird. That's what he normally
calls
and
Charlie points that out. She's like, you're such a weirdo. And he's like, leave me alone.
Yeah, like you said, I can't believe we literally just did the romance episode, and now we're getting all this beautiful Whit and Jenny content.
And we also, Emily, I was hoping so bad that Emily and Jack would have lines in it. And they didn't.
I know.
And I was like, where's my comfort scene of Jack with Whit? And where's Emily at the funeral? I need Jack to talk to Whit and give him a hug. I need it.
Yeah, I'm so glad that Jenny was there to, keep on smacking Whit on the back of the head. And
Jenny
be nice.
Was, the spine of this episode. She was what held everything together and kept it on track.
She was the only sensible person out of the 4 of them through the whole episode.
Yeah, pretty much. And, she was kind of hurt a little bit by the fact that they eloped, but she didn't flip out over it.
Yeah.
She's just like, oh man, okay. And Whit was like, what do you mean? And she was like, calm down, John. I actually called Whit John at one point while I listened to this. I was like, John, no. And I paused and I was just like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
it was
Whit...
weird. It was really weird.
Whit finally gets on board and is like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be nice. I'm going to accept this. To Wilson, he decides to be, like, aggressively kind. He's like, be quiet and enjoy it. Call me Whit. I was like, I've never been so scared of Whit before. Nope, wait, that's a lie, because he can no-scope throwing axes with his eyes closed. But I've never been second most more scared of Whit than that. He was like so angry about it. It's like, be quiet and enjoy it. Call me Whit. You're my brother. And I was like, okay.
He puts like part of a handcuff around Wilson's hand and he puts the other one on him. He's like, you're my brother now. Do you think like if Whit was more of like the protective older brother who like felt out how his sister's boyfriends were or whatever like that before they went into a relationship, he like takes Wilson in the back. He's like, yeah, let me show you my axe throwing skills.
That's why he learned it, Victoria.
But yeah.
Do you think Whit, in all of his like major businessman endeavors ever, when he was like opening a building, instead of cutting a ribbon with giant scissors, he
just throws it.
He goes to the back of the audience, all the way back down the aisle, stands behind all the reporters, and he throws an axe all the way down the way, and it slices through the red ribbon?
I hope so. I hope so bad. I don't remember who wrote Angels and the Horsehair, but I feel like they never would have expected us to get as much content as we did out of that axe throwing scene.
That one scene.
That one scene. They never knew that it would scar us for our lives.
So,
I still can't believe the live show made me cry. I'm never going to get over that. I'm never going to be able to take that back.
I know.
Because I'm going to be able to be like, yeah, that episode had all these dumb jokes and all this dumb stuff, and it also made me cry.
Hey guys, buy the Blackguard books. It's merchandise.
Did you really quick
later.
No, I will forget.
Okay.
When Glossman showed up, was your first thought, this is probably because of the Blackguard books?
No.
That was my first thought. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's showing up just so they can be like, oh, hey, it's because he's a little bit more popular now since the books came out. And then they directly said, like, it's because the books are out.
And they put them on screen, and they're like...
And I was like, I could have pieced 2 and 2 together, show. You didn't need to do that,
well,
although the books are really good.
I couldn't, apparently. I just thought, like, oh, they wanted to shoehorn Paul McCusker in here because he was like the third biggest writing force on this show throughout the entire history, and now he doesn't work there, so they wanted him to cameo in the 30th anniversary show. And there's no other character as whom he could cameo.
It was because of Glossman in the books.
So, after all this planning and Jenny worked so hard, they decide to elope. And I was like, that's rough, man. Like, my guess was that they were just super overwhelmed by Jenny's enthusiasm, especially since they're just so, like, free-flowing, not planning-seeming kind of people. They were so overwhelmed and terrified. Like, they really seemed that way. And Jenny's like, we need to do this, we're going to get all this stuff done. And they're like... And so,
that's what I thought it was going to be, but then they're like, nope, Charlotte's dead now, and I was like, how dare you, show?
So, I was like...
How dare you?
So, I realized as soon as they're like, we didn't even get a chance to tell them, like, why we got married, why we did it, and I was like, she's already dying, because my first thought was, like, the shotgun wedding, Charlie's pregnant, and I was like, no, they probably wouldn't do that. So, don't want another Pamela has a problem.
I wondered if they were going to do something.
Well, that was the most obvious thing. It's like, oh, Charlie's pregnant, so they got married. But then I was like, no, she's probably dying. That's probably what this is. She's probably dying. Also, because I'm like, I feel like if Whit had a nephew or niece, we would know about it by now, even though they never mentioned the sister except for one episode for the first 800.
I feel like they still could have told Whit and Jenny.
Well,
I would have just screamed the words at him, I'm dying, and I feel like that would have gotten his attention.
I was so angry, and it was like,
Like,
they did say, like,
Wilson was like, there was no way we could have told you. I was like, you could have just screamed the words, I'm dying
Well,
at him while he was being a jerk and interrupting you while you were trying to, like, talk about your wedding and
they
stuff.
did point out it wasn't that they couldn't tell him, it was that Charlie got upset, and then she decided not to tell him at that point. She's like, you know what, Whit, you don't get to know now. And I was like, just say something. And Wilson's like, I could have said something, but she didn't want me to. Like, she specifically after that point decided, I don't want Whit to know. And Whit's like, oh, I think you should have told me anyways. And I was like, probably right.
Yeah, that's... Can you imagine if she said something like, you'll be really upset once I'm dead that you didn't do this, and that was like the last thing she ever said to him.
Oh, you mean like Leonard Meltzner and his father?
Oh, yeah, actually that's true.
Yeah.
That is what happened.
Yeah.
But never mind.
Why does it keep on happening, Victoria?
Because they don't like us and they want us to suffer, that is why.
Oh. So, yeah. As we're talking about, they did the thing. They did the last time they ever saw each other thing that's like my saddest thing. It's Stolen Century all over again, except one, there's no Umber staff breaking to make it okay after the fact, and also they go on a hate note instead of a love note also, so it's like triple sadder than
I can't believe this
Taco.
episode didn't make you cry, because as soon as they were like,
it could be because I was on the bus.
Jenny's dead, or Charlotte's dead now, I just like started crying, and I was crying for the rest of the episode.
She died so fast. I was like, I guess this was like the 50s probably. Like this was like 70 years ago or so that she would have died.
Like they didn't notice that she wasn't looking healthy or anything?
Well, also...
Or is it like they barely see her, so they can't remember what she looks like or something like that?
Like, the medicine is not what it is now. It makes sense that she would have died so much faster, and it would have taken longer to diagnose and stuff, because there isn't the same kind of, like, alertness and testing, and, like, campaigns to know what to look for and stuff. We don't even know what kind of cancer it was, granted.
Man, everyone Whit loves is dead.
I know.
Do you ever think about that?
Yes.
Like, everyone from his past who he
like...
loves is dead, except for Wilson, and then he, like, literally everyone. Even if they aren't technically dead within the show, their actors have passed away, so they can't come back on the show. And, like, the only one who isn't like that is Wilson.
Oh, I was
and then Whit finds out that he has cancer, too.
I was like, this is so sad. Alexa, play I Slept Floor, and then I hated myself even more. But no, it's true, and
I almost just hung up the Skype call on you. I hope you know.
On this specific note, I was like, given that Whit apparently has a mountain of unclosured baggage with Charlie, I'm really surprised that she never showed up or was even mentioned in the Mortal Coil when they're talking about all the losses that Whit had suffered.
I feel like, now bear with me, he's so guilty, he feels like he doesn't deserve to see her again.
That's what I wonder. Or if it's because she was in his life for such a short time compared to Jenny, that's why she didn't come up as much. Like it's
he forgot who she was temporarily.
Temporarily meaning 30 years.
Yeah. He sees Wilson, and Wilson's like, it's me, and he's just like, oh my gosh. He's like, I have like these monthly checks that go out that just say like Knox on them, and I had no idea what. I was like, was that a charity? Was that like, I don't know, a child I adopted then forgot about? And it turned out to be my brother-in-law.
We already made a joke about the one who knocks, right? I think we made that joke already.
I think so.
It's even more appropriate now that it turns out Wilson had skin cancer. I know. So
this episode is so sad.
I have to say, looking back at the beginning of the episode, I cannot blame Whit for getting mad at Wilson for not telling him about having his lesion removed. And that means that Wilson had been traveling as a pastor for like 70 years by the time he came to Odyssey in album 62. Because I'm guessing they must have been around 30 or so.
Everyone's just so old in this show.
I know. And Whit, based on the most popular fan in birth year that he has, is going to turn 100 in 4 years from now. Whit's going to turn 96 this year.
Keep going, my man.
And which means Wilson is
Going
also the
strong.
same age as well.
Nice.
So
There's
yeah,
just oh, this episode was so good.
so sad. In the
It
doc,
was so good
in the
though.
video doc, we follow the story. It's so relevant and ties into the emotionalness of this episode. We follow the story of the wedding planning of the daughter of one of the people who works at the AIOC that we've never met before. And they're like, how is a wedding planned? What's the use of a professional wedding planner? And I guess it's relevant because Connie, that's what Connie does. And then there's a bunch of siblings that individually talk about, like, here's some awful things that my siblings have done, and here's some awful things that I've done to my siblings. And then Danny Huerta is here again talking about like forgiveness and stuff. He
And then
brings
one of
back
them,
the thing
like,
where it's like,
one of the siblings walked into the room and they're like, surprise, I have cancer. And you got to see the live action, like, reactions to all the siblings.
wow, that's
Did that happen
really
too?
terrible, Victoria. Danny
You
Huerta
can cut that.
brings back his plastic ant with a pickaxe and talks about how forgiveness is like ants that crawl into your brain and chip off parts of your brain with the pickaxe. And I'm like, this metaphor is not any less confusing than the first time that you did this, it like however many years ago in the AIOC.
I don't remember that.
I barely remembered it, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Okay, the WebQuest stuff. There was a story I thought was very fascinating about this young girl who she was a super like sports athlete girl, like basketball, I think, or was it tennis? And she had a rare bone cancer in her leg or in her knee. And they're like, we can either amputate the whole leg or amputate below the knee, but either way, you're going to lose your knee joint. Like, you'll have a prosthetic joint at your knee, and so you won't be able to play sports anymore. And then she found out about a third option, which is extremely rare, which is a rotation plasty, where they cut off the leg. Okay, so to be clear, let's use anatomical terms here, scientific anatomical terms, where the upper leg is called your thigh, your lower leg is called your leg. So they amputated at the hip. They remove the thigh and the knee, throw it away. They keep the leg, ankle, and foot, turn it backwards 180 degrees, reattach it at the hip, and now your leg is your thigh and your ankle is your knee, and your foot is what attaches a prosthetic with a new leg and ankle and foot. And now you have a working knee still, because your knee is what used to be your ankle, but backwards. And because she had that working joint, she can still play sports now with the prosthetic. And I was like, that's really weird, but very fascinating, medically speaking.
What?
So, like...
No, I can picture it, but, like, wouldn't your proportions be, like,
yes.
all screwy?
Well, yes, your thigh would be very narrow because it used to be your shin.
I feel like... So, do they just, like, put the rest of your leg on ice?
No, I'm sure they'll just toss it out. It had cancer. Why would they keep it?
No, I mean the part that they're going to reattach.
Yeah. They put it on ice, and then they'd have to attach nerve endings and stuff. I don't know exactly how they go about doing, like, reattaching tissue and having, like, muscle connections and stuff. And I don't know if they have to put in some sort of external wiring to manually connect muscle bundles.
Would that actually work?
Apparently it does. It's a rare procedure, but it has been done successfully multiple times. And then the rest of the bottom half of the leg, that's now the upper half, the bottom half is now prosthetic. But because the knee joint is still organic, you can still play sports, because that's the part that's bearing a lot of the weight that's critical for tennis or basketball, whatever she was playing. I was like, that's very interesting.
That's, like, crazy.
I know.
Oh, man.
I know. It's like you have like a horse leg, basically. You're like an ungulate now, because like you're the thing that looks like your knee is actually your ankle, and then your foot is the whole bottom half of your leg.
Also, that other cancer thing I said that because I thought that was what was going to happen.
Ah.
I wasn't, like, making a joke about it.
Okay, that makes more sense.
I thought you were gonna say like that's what happened in it to like connect the storylines even more or
No, it
something.
was just about siblings arguing with each other.
Okay.
Because the whole theme of the
That's
episode
that's
is
a
like,
lot lighter a tone I thought it was
yes.
gonna be then.
No, because the episode's all about like, we are bad at love, but we try, but we're bad at it. I really like the fact that this episode had Whit messing up in present day stuff and not just the past stuff. And it's still family stuff that he messes up at. They still manage to squeeze more blood from that stone somehow.
That's what I was thinking about. I was like, well, it's a good thing we have Wilson here, so we have more family Whit can hate.
Yeah.
And develop his character more through his family, because he's good at literally everything else except for family and, like, love. He's good at literally everything else.
I have to say, I was really, like, you know, we haven't really known if we've assumed that Charlotte was probably dead at this point until this episode, but we didn't really know.
Or she was in hiding, or she's a secret agent.
Or that. We didn't know, like, when they were married, when she died, any of the whole history of that whole relationship that she had with Wilson. I had presumed that they were married for longer than, like, a month, which is
2
not
weeks.
the case. Well, 2 weeks
2 weeks.
after they got back. They had a short honeymoon, you'll remember, after the wedding. So probably a month-ish. So that was their whole marriage, and Wilson's been single this whole time since, which is really sad. He fell in love with Charlie. He married her for like a month, and now he's been single for over half a century since.
You know what we need?
And that's wild.
You know who he needs?
That's what that history was. Joanne. Another
He
Joanne.
needs his own Joanne.
Yeah.
And he also needs an elevator to win her over.
Yep.
Get everyone find yourself a Joanne. Someone who will love you and think the moon of the stars of you, and also keep you level-headed when you get a little crazy. And get yourself an elevator to present to the aforementioned Joanne.
Man, it's so weird that, like, she died so young and so long ago, and Wilson, it's just weird that, you know, they have this bond where they're like, oh yeah, he's my brother-in-law. It's like, you were married to my sister for a month, and then even like 70 years, but we're still brothers. And like, it's really beautiful, but it's just weird to like recontextualize what, I didn't spend that much time trying to figure out, I guess, what the relationship was, because I knew we didn't know enough to make a lot of educated guesses, and we would learn more later. So it's like, there's not a lot of point in trying to speculate, because I know it will be coming soonish.
I didn't think Whit was as mean as you're describing him as at the funeral.
No, I wasn't talking about the funeral. I was talking about earlier.
No, but like at the funeral, he was like, "You're my brother," and blah blah blah, and you're like, "I'm intimidated."
No, that wasn't at the funeral. That was when they decided to help with the wedding. It was just the one line that he said. And
never mind.
Wilson's like,
I thought you were talking about like their conversation at the funeral.
No.
It's like, I thought that was beautiful.
That was beautiful.
What are you talking
No,
about?
I mean, like, when he first decided to help them out, and Wilson's like, oh, you're good with this, John? And he was like, be quiet and enjoy it. Call me Whit.
But like, I'd finally stopped crying while they were at the funeral and stuff, and then it was like, you're my brother, and I started crying again, and I was like, stop!
You know what? It's funny, when he said that, my mind went, imagine if you could go back in time 5 years and then say, here is a scene with Whit from the past, and just play that right there, where it's like, you're my brother. And it would be like Star Wars Episode 5 reveal, listening to that in the past.
What do you mean?
Like, hearing, like, Whit has a brother? Like, that's what I would say, of just like, if you just isolated that clip and being like, this is Whit, and he's not speaking metaphorically. And then play that to me in the past.
I would probably jump to the conclusion that, like, he does in fact have a sister, and it is canon.
I know, but that was already shocking enough. And
I know.
It was just...
But, like, I would think, like, since the sister's been mentioned, it could perhaps be her husband.
It would still be shocking, because that was back when we were still like,
Yeah.
I was the only person in the world who believed that Whit still had a canon sister.
That's because you wanted, like, your weird Buck Oliver, Dr. Blackguard grossness to be real.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it is weird to think about the fact that, like, they basically put this episode out now to, like, plug the books, or vice versa. They're putting the books out because they finally put this out. They're like, okay, we've established enough for the world now that we've got any plot twists about the relationship out of the way. Now we can start filling you in on all the, like, Young Whit details. It made me think of, was it Night of the Doctor? The short that they put out with, like, the 8th Doctor right before the 50th anniversary special. Whereas, like, the 8th
stuff with him in River?
when it showed him regenerating. Sorry, yeah, not Night of the Doctor, whatever it was. The one where it showed the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann, regenerating into John Hurt. And he lists off, he name drops, like, all of his companions from the audio dramas and stuff.
Oh.
And that's what I thought of when they were like, oh, all of these characters that you're going to meet soon in this book, pick up now in a Christian bookstore near you.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I have anything else to say about the episode. It gave me a lot of emotions. I really wanted Emily and Jack to show up. That's my only complaint. Although it would have kind of maybe been a little, I don't know, a little weird to just give them, like, one line and then be like, goodbye. But that's totally what they did to Emily in the Triangle, and that's still a great two-parter, so.
No, yeah, they did much more than that. Because it would, if they gave her one line, it would be like, okay, that makes sense. But they, like, bring her in and have a conversation about, like...
No, Devin, I was joking. I know they do that. That's one of the best scenes in all of the Triangle. It was like, the conversation with Emily.
What was that about Emily's dad's bull? What? And then she's gone. I'm like, what?
And she disappears forever.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, this is just like my dad and his weird action figures, and then she leaves.
My work here is done.
But you didn't do anything. That's me at Jason in every single live show.
It's really true, though.
And I have more to say on that very soon.
So, final thoughts for this episode. Probably time for that, right?
You go first.
We learned a lot in this episode. We learned a lot. We filled in gaps in the timeline, both about Whit's childhood and about adulthood that we didn't know previously.
You have to redo, like, Whit's entire lore now.
Oh, believe me, I was taking notes in a separate document as this was going on. And it was so sad and beautiful and emotional, and it was so sad, and I can't believe Whit's been living with that this entire time without talking about it. He didn't get to say goodbye at all. They left on this, like, note of anger and hatred, and then she died.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe they weren't even, like, close this whole time is the weird thing. Like, that they apparently had such a contentious relationship, it sounds like always.
Honestly,
maybe not as children, but...
I hope this doesn't sound bad, but I'm glad it's that way. Otherwise, I would have all these complaints about why she wasn't mentioned more and stuff.
I know, it's just sad. Because I'm like, it's like, I have a sister and she's great. And I'm going to be sad.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way about you.
If that was like,
if Devin did this to me, first off, this would not happen. I don't think either of us would do this to each other.
What, not tell the other that we had
really
cancer
terrible.
Or that we were getting married to someone we hated?
Both of those things. Yeah, like, I don't think any of these scenarios would happen to us. And if they somehow did, they would end up very differently, I feel.
I think you're correct, yes.
So, the entire time I was just like, what's wrong with you? Get along with your sibling, you dummy. And I was sad. So, I guess for equal now because you cried at that part in Stolen Century when Loop and Taco were separated.
No.
But
No, it was a different part.
Didn't? Oh.
It was the Lucretia thing.
Oh, I thought like that was the last time you ever talked to your sister.
No, it's one of the parts that gets me the most emotional, but the only one that made me cry on my first listen through was one of the things about Lucretia losing everyone.
Never mind. But
it is one of the things that makes me most emotional in the whole show. Yes, you're correct.
But yeah, this episode, it broke me. I am a broken person now because of this episode. It made me cry a lot. I had like tears rolling down my cheeks, kind of crying. Not like blubbering, crying, or sobbing, or anything like that. The only episode that's made me do that in recent years was Life Expectations. No.
Life Expectancy.
Yeah, Life Expectancy. I always get the name wrong for that episode, like every single time. And it's weird because I like Life Expectancy, but it's nowhere near any of my favorites or anything like that.
It's still mine. Although, wow, we'll talk about it next time.
On the favorites list, I almost did put like part 2 just because of Jeff Lewis and like how big that was to me, which would have been like the worst reason to put it on ever. Yeah. But I don't know about you, but I've been looking at like multi-parters, like single parts.
Back to this.
Multi-parters. Anyway, this episode was so good. I feel like there isn't anything else I can say that I haven't already said. Oh man, this episode was so good. Who wrote this again?
Phil, obviously.
Phil, you broke my heart. Why? Why would you do this to me, Phil? I don't really think I have anything else to say. This 5 stars.
Yes, obviously.
5 big stars.
Obviously 5 out of 5.
So good. Oh my gosh, my feelings.
So that's Charlotte. Now let's talk about another episode of equal footing of quality. Another episode that I feel is equally representational of the quality of Adventures in Odyssey and as an audio drama.
Is that a joke?
No. This is actually when we do next week. This is the 30th anniversary, 30th birthday live show. Is now my number one favorite Adventures in Odyssey episode.
Okay, yeah, he's joking.
So let's talk about that right
now. I thought you say it's your favorite live show for a second.
No.
Okay.
That's like... Let's talk.
No.
Let's talk about the live show.
Okay.
So now we have episode number ? 30th birthday live show, written by Phil Lawler, Paul McCusker, and Dave Arnold. It took 3 people to write this episode. And,
are you kidding me?
Well, granted,
you know what my theory is?
As I say this, it's
only one person wrote the bridging stuff, and then the original stuff is just written by those other people.
That's what I was going to say.
What it is.
That's what I was going to say, yes.
Because this is basically a clip show, guys. A clip show episode with add-ons.
Yeah.
Yay. And it's like over an hour long. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like 75 minutes.
I forgot I had to listen to this episode for today, and it took me forever to finish it. At one point, I just had to pause it and, like, take a breath.
Oh, I did that, like, 18 times while watching it.
And then by the end of it, I was just, like, on Tumblr at the same time. At the beginning, I think, like, the first 15 minutes or so, I just, like, was watching it normally, and then I started getting bored, and then I started playing Union Cross on my phone. While I was like straightening my hair at the same time, because just straightening my hair wasn't enough of a distraction for me.
No, I feel you. So we open with Chris and Dr. Julius Schnetzelbanker, and he's like, I have invented audio drama. And the cassette...
And then he said like, oh my gosh, then he said, I invented cassette tapes, and I was like, are cassette tapes actually not a thing in Odyssey? I feel like they've mentioned them before, and Chris is like, those are a thing already. silly. And I was
Actually,
like, okay, never
I
mind.
knew that
He's
was
just
going to happen
dumb.
because earlier today, when I was doing the web content for Charlotte, they talked about cassette tapes, and they're like, even though they were invented by Dr. Julia Schnitzelbanker or not, as you and it said something in parentheses, and it was like, oh, they're talking about the live show that I haven't watched yet, but I will in like an hour from now. And yeah, it was in there.
And you're like looking forward to that conversation. You know what I really like? You know, it's one of the best things about this live show that he is only in that one part and he doesn't come back a bunch of times throughout the rest of the episode.
So he's like, I have a writer here. And it's funny because I was reading the Taz graphic novel yesterday and then I was reading this and like Magic Brian is trying to clash in my mind with Dr. Schnitzelbanker, and I was like, nope.
That would make this so much better.
Like, separate it. They're not the same German accents.
They're very different.
But the thing that I thought, though, you sent me... Oh, no, you didn't send me that clip. I just saw it on Tumblr. There was a clip of the Magic Brian part from the live show where they're doing the live reading, and they had someone who wasn't Griffin playing... There's someone from another podcast who was doing the voice of Brian.
He was voicing him, and he was also voicing like Clark or something like that.
He sounded more like Julia Schnitzelbanker than he did like Magic Brian, and I thought about that. I was like, he sounds like Chuck Bolte. He doesn't sound.
I don't know. And that lady sitting beside him played Killian.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I watched like a lot of those clips, like I said the other day.
Mm-hmm. So he's like, I have a writer here, and then he pulls up Bob Smithhauser. I was like,
I thought it was funny that I didn't realize who he was, but I was like, hey, that's kind of funny that they brought in a tied up guy. Although, if they are going to do like an audio version of this, I hope that they add in some muffled sounds of someone being dragged in, because there's like no sound at all coming from him. I'm like, this is actually kind of too real. The fact that they don't have any comedic gagging noises, it's kind of making me uncomfortable.
I was like, it's weird that like every writer is here. Probably most of the writers are here at least, and we know that like, you know, well, I mean, Chuck is already Dr. Julia Schnitzelbanker, but they have Phil and they have Paul and they have Nathan and probably Kathy and Sam there as well. And yet they choose to use Bob as the writer who's never written an episode of Adventures in Odyssey. I don't know.
No, it's kind of funny.
I know
though,
Nathan's doing stage management and stuff, but
when the episode started, I didn't realize they had like instruments and stuff to do all the music in like a little pit at the bottom. Also, that was a really big like stage.
It was huge when I finally like noticed like how big it was.
When I started watching it, like the first shot, I was like, so were they not on the cruise for this?
What? At first, I was just picturing
so
like
big.
a flat audience room, like it's just going back, like the stage is like 4 feet off the ground, and then it's just flat going back, and then we see the theater, and I was like, "That's on a boat? That's like."
It's like that is the Titanic.
Yeah,
you wouldn't even get something like that on the Titanic. It's so big.
I mean, I have seen a cruise ship once when I was like at Waterfront, like here in Vancouver, and I was like, oh, there's a cruise ship like docked, and I was standing next to it, and like they're big and stuff. I've never been on one, of course, but like that's big. That's a big room.
It is a big room. And then like that composer, he stood up and he was standing up, and his arms were moving for that's what I meant. The conductor, his arms moved for a second, like when Chris was saying her opening things, and I started laughing, and I was just like, is that guy a composer? Is he composing Chris, like directing her what line she's supposed to say? That's what I meant. Conducting what line she's supposed to say next. And then at the end of the episode, I was like, oh wait, no, they actually did have like instruments and stuff. That actually was a conductor. It wasn't just like someone standing up in his seat.
I'll be real.
Also, you could hear a baby crying in some parts.
I didn't realize that there was live instrumentation until you said it now.
And there was also like, you could hear this one lady at one point laughing really hard, like really close to where it was being recorded. The baby thing kind of makes me think of that Shining documentary where that one guy was saying a theory, and then you could hear his kid crying in the other room. And he's like, oh, sorry, can you hear that?
So,
I have to go get that.
I don't know if you noticed this super early on like I did, but I was like, hey, there's a camera angle where they're looking out into the audience so you can see the whole room. And in the foreground, they have a Foley table. And someone left a fidget spinner laying about on it, I noticed. Which became even more interesting.
And you were like, oh no.
Which became even more interesting later when they mentioned fidget spinners. And Christopher Deal spins a ratchet, like a ratchet wrench into the mic. And I was like, So why did they have an actual fidget spinner?
What? Is that what fidget spinners sound like in Odyssey?
Yeah, apparently it's so seamless. They spin so far, when it goes like as you're spinning it. No friction.
Okay, what was the direct quote I said when I saw the fidget spinner? Let's see if I can find it. No, wait. Okay. Well, fidget spinners are now canon to AIO. Kill me. Victoria Francis, 2018, now deceased.
So, Grayson Smith, who is the second Get in the Show winner, is Dale Jacobs' nephew interning at the Odyssey Times. Sadly,
I wonder if he's gonna show up again. What do you think?
I am going to say there's a 2% chance of that. Sadly, his role was not as...
The Get the Show contest joke. I was like, I can understand why some people might find that funny. It went on very long, though.
It went on super long. Yeah, his role, not nearly as big of a role as becoming Connie's half-sister who becomes a main character on the show. This isn't even a numbered episode that he appeared in. And I was like, it seems so far like the only content this episode is going to have is just really heavy tongue-in-cheek, self-referential humor. They go to nonsensical lengths to make it do a gigantic wink at the audience, like Whit not knowing what cruises are, just for the sake of making a fan servicey joke. And
also, were there like points where you're just like, well, they just roasted the audience like 5 times in a row in the span of 30 seconds for like going to...
What, the audience?
They roasted the audience to like go see them.
The number of jokes.
And like Wooten,
imagine a Get in the Show contest. Let's say the name Cruises. Who would do that and all this stuff? Go into a place and see their favorite voice actors, and I'm like, just do the show, guys.
You're like, you are aware that I'm watching this while San Diego Comic-Con is happening, right? But Wooten coming in and grunting as he brings in those boxes, only for him to say one moment later, oh yeah, I'm not actually holding boxes, as you can see, I'm just doing voice acting stuff, made me just go like, then they can see you, and they see you and you come in, and you're like, where should I put these boxes? And you're grunting, and they're like, put the boxes over there, and he's like, I don't have any boxes, and I'm like, what do they see then? Are they just entertained? Are they all blind? Did they all become blind with like between episodes? Is that why this doesn't have any numbers? Because they're ultimately going to end the show with everyone becoming blind, and this is like a big spoiler or something? I don't understand.
This takes place in the future chronologically, before the present long ago, but after Adventures in Odyssey will eventually end.
Did you get like really jazzed when you saw Katie and Will? And you're like, I talked to them.
I didn't really think about it that much.
I did. There were so many points where I just like looked at the screen and I was like, Will definitely improvised that line.
Will,
like all the funny jokes, I was like, Will definitely wrote that in or improvised that on the spot.
Christopher Deal now like canonically exists in the show, so that was weird. Note that one down in the history books.
That was weird. And he works at Campbell College.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, but can I just say before I forget? Will playing his guitar and singing, and then his little guitar flip. I was like, that is the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh my gosh, I love him so much.
Christopher Deal brings out a bad joke alarm. I was like, is this a callback to Heat Wave? Or is this just...
I didn't think it was. I was like, well, I will give them points for at least... like acknowledging that there are
the fact that all these jokes are bad,
in the live show to like actually warrant a bad joke alarm.
It didn't go off enough. I will give them
kudos for that. But yeah, I was thinking, but one, from the second they mentioned it, I was like, it's not going to go off enough, like nearly enough, because just them presenting it in the span like 30 seconds after that, I was like, it already should have gone off like 4 more times, and it hasn't gone off 1 more time yet. And also, I feel like if you're gonna have a bad joke alarm, maybe just don't do that. You know what you should do? Write better jokes, and then you won't need the buzzer. And then you can just be like, look at how much we've grown. And there was only one joke in the show that actually made me laugh.
And it was the one that set off the bad joke alarm for
And,
me. I don't remember what it was now,
No, it wasn't one that set off the bad joke alarm for me, but like, it wasn't even like a laugh. It was just kind of like a kind of thing. And it was so forgettable, I can't even remember what it was. I think it might have been the Star Wars joke, maybe? But also, they said Star Wars again, which is something we should mention.
They do it a lot. Is it worth mentioning?
Whatever that other thing was.
Even? So Jess Harnell comes out, and I was like, finally, he's here to save the day. He's wearing black iridescent bell-bottom leggings, a black shirt, and black sequin jacket.
He looked fantastic.
And I was like,
can I just say?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Him
and I was like, I'm blessed. I just want to thank God, not only God, but also Jesus.
I know, right?
And can I say, Jess Harnell was legitimately one of the best things, if not the best thing, about the entire show. Mm-hmm. And like the entire time he was on, I was just like enjoying myself and having a good time, which is not something I can say about like any other live show that has Jess Harnell in it. For some reason, they're like, hey, we're going to give Townsend Coleman all the bad lines, and we're going to give Wooten all the good lines, except for that one that relates to Townsend Coleman. All the other ones are going to not be that bad. And then, yeah, I actually really liked Jess Harnell in the show. I had fun when he was on stage. I was kind of upset he wasn't in it as much as he should have been, which was just basically everything except for some of the singing, and also everything with Will and Will's guitar flip, because that was all great.
So speaking of the guitar flip, we're not done introducing characters yet to the stage.
There were a lot of people in it. Also, I thought Kimmy was going to be in it.
It is weird. Oh yeah, she wasn't there, I think. She wasn't on the cruise, and that's why, so I guess so.
Okay.
Speaking of Will's guitar, the Westcott sisters and Shona Kennedy, Jules, are there. The little theater stage now has a hydraulic stage lift, I guess. I was like, is this supposed to be canon? I mentioned it before. I was like, this is the stage version. It's not an edited audio version, so I don't want to say it's canon, just like the live version of Press the Red Button. But they sing a bunch of songs and stuff. I believe...
I was really excited because I was like, oh, we're going to get new songs. And then they were basically like all songs we'd heard before.
There's 3 songs...
Just like reused from Legend.
3 songs from Legacy.
Legacy,
one of which didn't even have a single word changed from it. There was one song... What did I say about it? One song...
And then they started singing like Christmas carols and it became a Christmas episode like halfway through. And I was so confused because I also forgot that this took place during November. For some weird reason, my brain was like, it's July, so it took place during July. At one point they said, well, it's almost Christmas, and I was like,
well, no, they did say at the top that this was like a holiday arts festival.
I don't remember them saying
that. Was the whole point of this entire performance, was a holiday show they were putting on at Wits End. So
oh wait, I remember them saying holiday show, but my brain was like, there's so many different holidays.
Well, here's the thing, Victoria.
So it could be any holiday.
Very first conversation in the episode is Kanye and Eugene arguing about fireworks going off during the Nativity. So.
Oh, yeah, I remember them saying that now. I was thinking when I heard that part, like, oh man, that'd be pretty awesome if they actually, like, set off fireworks in the actual show. And I was like, but they wouldn't do that. And then I get to the end and they have, like, this entire light show, and I was like, whoa!
Entire light show, let's not get carried away.
My reaction was like when Magnus first sees Brody in that one Taz Live show, and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And all the while, like...
So,
yeah.
So yeah, the Westcott sisters, they sang, I believe, 7 songs. There's 3 Christmas carols, 3 songs that were from Legacy, but 2 of them were slightly retuned lyrics-wise. And then 1 song that wasn't from either of those, but I'm pretty sure was Anakin's main song from the musical version of Episode 2. It's like, sand, there's so much sand, I just want to settle down, but I can't escape all of the sand. It's so
I
rough
really
and
like
coarse
that.
and
That was actually the
irritating.
best song
And it
in
gets
the entire
everywhere.
thing. I think that was probably, I don't know, maybe an original song to their group
Well, I assume it's one
that they were just
of Will's songs.
advertising, yeah. But like that was the best song out of all of the songs. And that was also the one where Will did his guitar flip and I was just like, "You're doing great, sweetie." And I was so happy.
They made John McBair odorous solely so that they could reuse the Stinky Malgeist song from Legacy.
Yeah, the second they started it, I was like,
and they
yep,
also
thank you for playing this a second time.
They also
in another episode.
I know made the South Spoon Rancho so they could make it almost rhyme with Santos Cuerpos.
That one Westcott sister, like the blonde one, she looked like she was having the time of her life. And I was just like, you know what? Good for you. You look like you're having so much more fun than like everyone else on this stage. I don't know if you noticed that too.
Yeah.
But she looked like she was having like a great time and I was really happy for her.
So we have all this like shameless like plugging and self-referential jokes about the cruise and stuff, like you said, and then jokes plugging like they get in the show contest, and then Glossman shows up and he's like, buy our books, blah, blah, blah. And then the screen is like,
no, Glossman shows up.
Books,
he has
books,
this giant, ridiculous mustache on, and I was just like, please, because they said he had a fake mustache, and I was like, please let it not actually be that big in canon, because Glossman would never do that. And then they're like, it's the size of a bush, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then Glossman
rhododendron,
had the
no
best
less.
line. Yeah, rhododendron bush. Glossman had like the freaking best line in the entire live show. He's just like, oh yeah, it's my Whit cosplay, pretty much. Like, that's not exactly what he said, but he was like, I'm doing my impersonation of Mr. Whittaker, and I was like, oh, shots fired, and I really wished I had like an air horn, and I was like, that was so good. I just love that Glossman like risked his entire like self and like possibly being thrown in jail or caught or whatever.
He's not on the run from the law.
Yeah, but he could be arrested for everything he's done.
Could he? He's a free citizen still, as far as we know.
Okay, yeah, and I guess he was on the radio and stuff, but like he hates Odyssey, and they would like pelt him with tomatoes if they had the opportunity, basically, and rip his hair out.
You think they would do? You think the people in the little theater to see the Christmas show are the type of people who would scalp a man?
Okay, probably not, but you know what? I would fight Glossman if I had the opportunity to.
Valid.
Would you? You would fight Glossman.
Absolutely.
But like, yeah, so all these people who would probably fight him, and then he just comes in, roasts Whit, promotes his book, and leaves, and I was like, what an icon! I know, honestly.
I like how Dale Jacobs is like, oh yeah, that sounds great. It's almost Christmas. Buy the book I wrote, please. Everyone. Okay, back to the episode. I was like, this is really starting to grate on me now.
I was cringing really bad.
So
I was like, it is a great book. Don't get me wrong, but I am bleeding from my eyes.
They finally get to the first sketch, which is the body from album 4, The Boy Who Didn't Go to Church, starring Young Jack.
These are us. Jack.
Young Jack, who is not Jack Allen.
Pirates.
The other Jack.
What's his last name? Davis.
Yes.
Yeah, Jack Davis. But
and it was also in
just
album
keep in
15.
mind, every single time a horrible joke happens or anything that makes me cringe, the thing that's running on loop in the back of my mind is this episode made me cry at one point, and it's just killing me.
So it was pretty similar. It was kind of similar. They changed the Brotherhood of Dutiful Youth to the Band of Dutiful Youth, which is a change I can appreciate. They're like, hey, it's been 30 years. Let's make it a little more gender neutral. And this throughout the entire show, and it increasingly grated on me throughout. why did they choose to use just plain room audio for this video? Like, everyone in here is mic'd.
What do you mean?
Why are they not, for the video that they're putting out, why don't they take the digital input from the actors' mics, and then they can layer in the audience room audio over that so that you can get like the applause and the laughter and stuff. Like, the audio of actual people doing the actual show is so muddled and soft from reverb, you can barely even hear it and understand what's being said in some places, even though they have microphones on. You have the digital input, but they just took like a mic in the middle of the room and they're just taking what the audience was hearing, and it's such terrible audio when they had all the mics, and I'm like, why would you do this?
Yeah, like I said before, you can hear like specific people laughing, and you can hear a baby crying and also talking at one point for like a couple minutes, and it really took me out of the moment.
And it's just weird. It's like, you guys aren't terrible at audio mixing. You're kind of the best at it. So why did you do this? So, and then...
also, when they said like Jay Lafitte, the main character, I like immediately sat up straighter and I was like, Jay's gonna be in this? And I thought Whit Hertford was gonna walk out and I was gonna be like, my boy. And then that never happened. And then they're like, and Jules is like, I am Jay. And I was like, you're not my son. It's like, I'm in a continuous... Like, I'm Marlin, and my life is just a continuous Finding Nemo whenever I'm listening to Odyssey, just looking for Jay, and I'm like, have you seen my son?
My boy, I left my boy.
I left my boy, I need him.
Yeah, the end of the sketch is the biggest difference. It's very different, because it doesn't end with the body, the death of the body.
Yeah, I really liked it. So, something we need to say, we were both spoiled about the fact that like there'd be a lot of repeating with all the sketches in it. And so when they started the body sketch, I was like, and when they started Young Guns Bonanza, I was like...
I was Young Gun Bananas listening to it.
What?
I was going Young Guns Bananas listening to it.
Yeah. And then they like added all this stuff and I was like, this actually isn't that bad. It kind of keeps it fresh, and I like that they did like more modern takes, kind of like adding certain things.
Wait, you mean the Star Wars line?
Also, I like the Star Wars line did make me laugh, so leave me alone.
I was like, I guess it makes sense because like this was in mid-November when this recorded, so it was a month out from Last Jedi.
Oh, I never thought of that. I kind of thought of how in the Aladdin show at Disneyland, they change out the jokes like every 3 days that Genie says. So they're always kept like culturally relevant to what show you're seeing.
It was very timely.
Like the events that happened that week.
Correctly, yeah, one of the jokes.
The last time we saw it, there was a joke about like the Miss America.
That's what I was going to say about Steve Harvey.
I didn't know what happened with that.
Yeah.
So everyone was killing themselves laughing, and I was like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what the joke was for that.
I think he read something, and he read like whatever the country was that Steve Harvey read wrong. It was like, oh wait, sorry, that's not it, and then read whatever the plot relevant thing was. I think that's what it was.
Okay. It could be.
I realized though, because we've done Young Guns Bonanza so many times now, I realized that
I could pick out all the new things.
That Matt Cartwood has now been played by Hal Smith, Paul Herlinger, and Andrei Stoico once apiece.
Aww. Also, I was like listening and I was like, Townsend's gonna be the son again, isn't he? And he was. And I was like, I know exactly how he's gonna read the word father. And then they had like 6 people say father at the same time, and I was like,
what is this?
What just happened? And it was like, my senses are overwhelmed. Also, like with Jay deciding to leave the body, they had
the consciences, yeah. They had the Rodney Dangerfield one, and then Harlow.
Impersonations and stuff. I was just like, I was wondering if it was going to be like The Present Long Ago, and just do like a bunch of different ones. Like, it was gonna do Arnold Schwarzenegger again,
Yeah.
even though he was already, like, the other voice.
Yeah.
And then Rodney Dangerfield. And I was just like, well, Jess, you lost one of your voices, because you definitely cannot do... What's his
Bill Cosby
name
anymore. Yeah.
again? Yeah, you can't do Bill Cosby anymore.
He did
so...
introduce a new one, though, which was Christopher Walken, which...
Yeah, which it was a very off impersonation.
Not
I don't
his
know if you
best
thought so
one.
too.
It was too high-pitched, I think, was the problem.
And it just...
It
sounded I was like, that is
was a little
probably
too
the
fast
worst
and a little
Jess
too
Harnell
high-pitched for
impersonation I've actually ever heard.
Christopher Walken.
Which is weird to say, because all of his impersonations are always, like, so on point.
I know, I was surprised.
And I'm glad I'm not the only one who thought this.
Yeah, I was like, that's weird.
And like Devin said before, the sketch doesn't end in a depressing way. And I was like, oh, this is actually really nice. And all the sketches, like... Also, I liked that they called out Young Guns Bonanza for having a really depressing ending. But at the same time, I was like, well, that's kind of why it stuck with me as a kid. Because I'd listen to it in the 50 different episodes it's in. And then I'd be like, wow, that was really dark. And then the show would just move on. And, like, Whit or Chris or whoever would, like, give a little, like... explanation to everything at the end. And then they're like, nope, we're gonna continue. And I was like, you're gonna continue the Young Guns Bonanza narrative? And I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of got excited. And then they just did a completely different thing and never mentioned it again. And I was like, you are all liars.
It's funny how when I'm listening to it, I think about it as an adaptation of Jesus' life, not an adaptation of Jesus' life. Because it's an adaptation of the parable which Jesus was telling about himself.
I don't get how it is.
I mean, I can explain it to you later.
Okay. I've never really understood it that
once
well,
you know who the characters...
sucks, because I've heard it like 500
Once you know who the
times.
characters are in the story, it's very obvious.
Okay, well, Jesus is the son.
Yes. And God's the Father. And he's like, this is my world. And he's like, Israel, come take hold of it, and you will live in it and occupy it, and in turn you will worship me. And then they were like, screw you, no, we're not going to listen to you. And he's like...
And then Jesus comes in.
He keeps on sending prophets to them over and over.
Oh!
And the prophets are like, hey, listen to God, love him, worship him, obey him and stuff. And they keep on killing the prophets throughout all of the Old Testament. And finally God's like, okay, I'll send my son. They have to listen to Jesus. And Jesus goes, and then they kill him. And then God, and it's like, what will the farmer do? He will cast out those people, and he will take the land, and he will give it to other people. And that was God, shaking the dust off his heels and opening the temple doors to the Gentiles and spreading the ministry through Acts and stuff like that.
Man, I have like an entire new appreciation for that whole bit.
And so when Jesus was telling that before it was happening, he was basically saying to the religious leaders, like, you guys are all these silver saddle slapper Stephanies, which was said wrong once in the episode. They didn't address it. And Jesus was saying, that's who you guys are. You guys are going to kill me. And then God is going to turn his back on you and bring salvation to other people outside of the nation of Israel because you have betrayed him so many times. And then they're like, okay, yeah, we should probably kill him. And then they ended up actually making the story true in the process, which is what Whit explains at the end of Over the Airwaves.
They got to the end and they're like, these all had a common theme. And I was like,
I know. I was like...
And everyone in the episode was like, are you sure about that? And I was like, okay, thank goodness I'm not the only one.
I know. I was
confused.
like... I couldn't figure out what it was. I was like, is it just like love or something super broad like that could apply to literally anything?
My guess was love.
The common theme is Jesus. So speaking of Jess, which we were a while ago, there's one singular thing that makes live shows worth it, and it's watching Jess make Chris break character. When he says something and she just like starts to lose it, and it's like that's why we come back.
There's one point where she was laughing while saying a line.
Yeah.
There's another point where like there was a completely unrelated conversation going on. She didn't have any lines, and then you could just hear her laughing in the background, and it was so good. Have they done live shows? Probably, where like they're sitting beside each other.
They usually are.
Done once where they're sitting like right beside. They weren't in this one though.
Well, they were in.
You know
what
I like
clumps.
to think? They like because there were like 4 clumps, and then Jess was like all the way at the bottom, like left hand side, like
house left,
all the way on the left, and Chris was at the top on the right hand.
Well, it depends when. During Young Guns
like,
Bonanza, he was in front of Chris.
Oh, okay. But like during lots of other parts, they were very far away from each other, and I was just thinking like I really like to think that they were like, okay, like it's a classroom or something like that. It's like we have to separate you two because you keep on making everyone
Nathan
laugh.
Hubler's like, do I have to come sit between you two?
And it's like we have to punish you two because you keep on ruining the live shows, and it's like no.
Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah is a Jewish holiday.
So during the sketch, there was another mention by Whit of Twitface. I was like, okay, I feel like we have finally settled on a canon primary social media site, which became even more interesting later when it's like, it's weird.
Twitface sounds like a horrible insult.
It's weird, it is. It's weird that AIOO was so resistant to bell-bottoming that they didn't want to create, like, they're like, we can't say Twitter, we can't say Facebook. It'll take us a decade after these websites become popular before we finally decide on like a name to call them in the show at all. But fidget spinners,
like,
let's talk.
Okay,
bring
in the fidget spinners.
I know, it's like that was literally like such a flash fad, and they're like, throw that in there, why not? It's literally already.
I think my heart actually stopped when they said fidget spinner, and I was like, I'm actually dead.
By the time that we watch this now in July of 2018, that is already a massively outdated joke now.
Yeah. There are fidget spinners as prizes that the kids can win in the summer reading club because a bunch of them were donated, and I was like, oh boy.
Saddest stories ever told.
One day we were reading a book.
Baby fidget spinners for sale, never
and
used.
They were just like going like this with their fidget spinner the entire time, and I'm pretty sure my eye was twitching like while I was reading them the book, and I was dying.
I mean, I absolutely support people's right to use them because they were created as a tool to help people stim when they have.
No, I do too, but it's the majority of people who use them don't need them.
Yeah.
For the same reason that a lot of other people do.
It does help people focus,
and it wasn't because
the
kid was using it. It was because it was loud while I was trying to read them the story and get them to concentrate and not be distracted.
Well, no, what's the Foley sound of one hand fidget spinning, right? Apparently we learned it in this episode, and it's the sound of a socket wrench.
I just like to think that fidget spinners canonically sound like socket wrenches in Odyssey.
I know. I like how, even without me realizing it, I'm literally spinning
Odyssey,
my spinning ring as I'm talking about it without even realizing I was doing it.
Yeah, Odyssey is Devin, that's the first fidget spinner. Is your ring.
Yeah, I know. I've been saying that for ever since they became popular. I've been doing this for the better part of a decade.
And you're a hipster. You're a fidget spinner hipster.
Yeah.
So Odyssey is like a real life AU, except for fidget spinners sound like socket wrenches, and that's the only difference.
So yeah, that was just an interesting thing that they did in there. I still don't know why they put. My only guess is they put the actual fidget spinner on the Foley table solely for the purpose of the video that would pick it up from that camera.
Oh, and they were like, where's Jason? And then they heard a loud flushing noise, and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to ignore the fact that the bad joke buzzer didn't go off when it should have, and focus on the fact that, if there was a bathroom that close to the little theater, we would have heard it in other episodes. Plus, did you notice that the sound mixing was really, really bad for the sound effects? There were so many where I was like, okay, it's been a lot better in other live shows because certain sounds are, slightly muted, even when they're just, on the board, because they're on the board.
Some of them...
And you can do that if they're pre-recorded. But, some of them should have been, really muted, and also Jules' voice.
I think...
when she was beneath the stage should have been muted. But you could hear it like with all perfect clarity. Like the flushing noise sounded like you were sticking your ear like right against a toilet, and I was like, that was way too loud.
It comes back to what I said earlier, because they were taking room audio for almost everything except for some of the sound effects they took like digitally, put it in there.
Yeah, but the thing is, you could have just like...
They could have, but they didn't.
They could have just made it like a muffled noise, and they didn't.
Nope.
And it made it sound like there was actually like a toilet right on the stage, which was really weird.
With a mic, with a condenser mic hanging
with
inside
like a
the bowl.
mic that is inside of it.
I know. And the fact that it was inconsistent for the Foley and just consistently terrible for all the voices, it was bad audio-wise. It was bad ear sound.
The singing was really good.
Yeah, but when you could hear it over the music, because...
I don't think the like voices, they weren't as bad for me as they were for...
You couldn't hear, you could barely pick out the harmonies in the singing because the sounds were so muted.
I could pick them out.
But you couldn't pick them, like if you listen to that and then you listen to the tracks in the album from album 52 and compare them, where it's actually like sharp audio from the mic.
Yeah, but they also have like sound panels.
But it's not the sound panels, like they have mics on. They're not taking the audio from the mics. They have a mic set up in the middle of the audience and they're listening to that. Of course it's going to sound terrible. But,
I don't know. I think you're throwing a little bit out of proportion when it comes to the voices.
It's just, if it was whatever show, I'd be like, okay, I get it. If this was a stage performance of like someone's Christmas musical or something, I'm like, okay, I get it, I understand. But for the most popular #1 audio drama on the planet, I just feel like the standards not just should be, they are a lot higher. These are some of the most talented audio designers in the world who work on this show. And so it's just really weird to me that this is the creative choice that they went with for that. Especially when they already had the mics, like they have the audio. It's not like, oh, we didn't have the technology or we didn't set it beforehand. They have all of the data they needed to put that together for the video, and they just chose not to use it, and it's just strange to me.
When they sang like the stinky whatever song,
John
I
McBair.
can't remember what it's called. I was like, okay, if they give him his own song, then they have to give all the other people before they go in their own songs, and they didn't. Which means they only gave that one guy his own song just so they could cover all the songs. And I was like, and it's the worst song too. So why do it?
So we finished Young Guns Bonanza, and then we finally have the segment which is new content. It's an OT Action news take on the Nativity. I was a little bit emotional to hear the innkeeper being played by Katie now, since she was Maggie Malooly in Back to Bethlehem. And she's basically playing the same character, but it's like instead of June Kendall, it's Connie Kendall now, and it's like this is the role her mom played back then, and
Aww.
I was like, aw. When they're like, the angels are about to start singing, and the Westcott sisters are like there, I was really hoping, I was just listening and waiting for da 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 da. I was like, please.
I have to listen to that gospel choir version.
I know. I was like, if they don't start singing Cruel Angel's Thesis for the Nativity, like, I'm gonna strike.
The song that came on when the angels were singing, just like that one voice, that was beautiful. That was very, very beautiful. And I was just like, not that the Westcott singers don't have beautiful voices, or Jules, / Shona, they all have amazing voices too. It's just like they went from, I think that was like recorded by someone else. I don't know who was singing that. Was one of them singing that?
I don't remember what overlaying voice
because it didn't look like
about.
One of them was singing it.
I don't remember.
Because like before it was like, the angels are starting to sing. There was already like some singing that you could hear.
Yeah, it was probably like a pre-recorded thing.
And it sounded like it was pre-recorded, and I couldn't see any of them singing. And it was like one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And they're like, the angels are starting to sing. And then it was just like, everything else sounded not as good in comparison. And I was just like, oh no. And then when they were like, come on, everyone, sing with us. And I was like, no. And then everyone started singing, and I was like, no.
Yeah, so that part where they got everyone to sing, Whit closes out the nativity by literally, even when we're outside of the sketches, they're still stealing content from former episodes because they just copy pasted Whit's monologue from the end of Madge and Guy.
I didn't
Where
even
he's
notice
like,
that,
some
honestly.
say that the wise men invented the art of gift giving, but that isn't really true. Jesus did that.
Maybe I just completely zoned
for
out
the
during
first
this part.
the first thing, and he was the gift. And he does like God knew that Jesus would head out of the manger and straight for the cross, and it was like word for word the same thing. And then a lone voice starts singing, "Oh come, let us adore him," which in Madge and Guy was Tom singing, and now it's the Westcott sisters. And I was like, it's a little bit sad because Walker Edmiston has passed away now, but these are characters who are now living on Tom's farm and introduced in the episode that was about him having passed away. So there's like a connection there.
Oh yeah, I thought the funniest part in the entire episode, unintentionally funny though, was when Jason came in, did all his voice acting stuff, and then I thought he was just, because, okay, for people who haven't seen the episode, what happened was whenever a character had a line, they would take in their, like, stuff, and then they would just, like, sit down and they'd stay on the stage for the rest of the show. But when Jason came in, when Townsend Coleman came in, he took his stuff on stage, sat down, was there for about 2 minutes, picked up all his stuff and left. And I was laughing so hard, and I was like, is this actually a thing that we can keep forever? Jason being in each live show for exactly 1 minute and then getting kicked out of the live show. Because this is the funniest thing.
He's like the Jeremy Farts of Odyssey live shows. Nobody wants him there.
And it's like, oh my gosh, this is so funny because you have like the I smiled fondly thing, and then you have him like trying to remain relevant in Push the Red Button and being like, hey, I heard all these past audio clips. Mm-hmm. They really sounded nothing like me, and do you guys need anything? Can I do anything? And then he's just like, this is how I voice act at the Harlequin Theater now. And then he
which apparently still exists.
Yeah. And then, and I was like, oh, that's cool that you're getting along with Edwin still. That's nice to hear. That Edwin Shakespeare is still doing good. And then he takes all his stuff and he leaves, and I got so excited, like so unbelievably excited. And I was just like, I really hope, like, I love Townsend so much, but I was like, I hope I don't see him again in this live show, because that will be the funniest thing ever. And then, like, 2 minutes later, he just comes back on stage and he sits down again, and I was like, why did you leave in the first place? And then he's just sitting on the stage with everyone else for the rest of the episode. What I hope happened is he accidentally stood up and left, and he wasn't supposed to. And then later on, he was like, oh, wait, no, I wasn't supposed to do that. And then he got back.
Yeah, he stood up, and then suddenly he was like, I wasn't supposed to do that. I can't sit back down now. I have to follow through, and just walks off the stage.
And then he just leaves. And I just like to think, like, everyone else behind stage, like, Paul or whoever was back there, and Nathan, are just like, what are you doing? But, yeah. And then he's just like, if I just go in with my next line, no one will notice. But guess what, Townsend? I noticed.
I like how they keep bringing back Chuck Bolte for some reason. Like...
Same.
Every live show. Like, I don't think he's worked on the show in, like, 15 years at least. But they keep bringing him back.
Is he the doctor?
Yeah, well, he's George Barkley.
Okay. Yeah,
and he was the first...
I was... Actually, when I first saw him, and they were like, Chuck Bolte, everyone! And I was like, oh my gosh, is George gonna have lines? And he's like, I am Dr. Julius Schnitzelbunker, and I was like, die.
It's funny, because, like, at the beginning, it's like, okay, he can do voices, so it makes sense. He's there...
Yeah.
Not because they want Dr. Julius Schnitzelbunker or because they want George Barkley. It's because Chuck Bolte was the first executive producer of the show for hundreds of episodes. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he was a regular writer and stuff. I'm pretty sure he hasn't worked as a crew member for many, many, many years. And yet they still continue to bring him back to play Dr. Julius Schnitzelbunker. And in BTV Live, even to play George Barkley mysteriously.
He's just such a beloved character.
And it's just weird because he's like not one of the main actors on the show.
In Odyssey, so few things in Odyssey can challenge my confusion when it comes to George Barkley being in BTV Live. Because you're like, I love you, but why are you here? It's so funny. Oh my gosh. This live show was just like the level of bad where it was just almost good.
Well,
and some parts were legitimately good. No, don't get me wrong. There were like a lot of just like flat out bad things. Like I was very bored in several parts. But also I feel like they could have had less songs. Like Christmas songs. I'm fine with the Odyssey ones being there, but they sang like 4 Christmas songs almost in a row. It kind of felt like caroling, and I just kind of wanted it to stop.
Okay, yeah. It says here,
Christmas
Chuck Bolte, it says on this AIOO Wiki page, Chuck Bolte left Focus on the Family in 1996. So it's been 22 years since he's worked for Focus, and yet they still bring him back for every live show.
That's so funny. I mean, with this one, you can make the argument, like, it's the 30th anniversary show.
I was
so,
2 years old when he left the company, and yet they still bring him back to play Julius Schnitzelbanker.
So he was only with them for 8 years, and then he left.
Basically, yeah.
Those must have been a very memorable 8 years.
I mean, he was the EP, but, like, still.
I guess he would have been playing George a lot after he left.
Yeah. Well, not a long time. I mean, George came back for a couple episodes, but that would have been around when the Barkleys left Odyssey, I guess.
Oh, well, never mind.
So he came back a couple more times. Like, he would have come back for the second hiatus and Living in the Gray. Like, after the second hiatus, I mean, for Whom the Wedding Bells Toll and Living in the Gray, and is that about it? And then the live shows?
Oh, then never mind.
I know.
So, is there anything else to say about this episode?
I don't think
Grayson did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
He was good. I was kind of hoping Buck would be in it, but he wasn't.
You can only fit so many people in. According to AIOO Wiki's character list, which when they do the characters in an episode, they list like characters who speak as the real selves, but they also list all the fictional characters in every sketch that happens. And this was the second longest number of characters listed for an episode, except for, I think it said Inside the Show, because that was like a clip show. But that's because like all the members of the body are listed separately from all the real people, separate from all the people in the Nativity, separate from all the people in Young Guns Bonanza. So it's like the cast times 4.
I don't really have anything else to say, I don't think. How would you rank it in terms of live shows? I don't think it was the worst.
I would put it above Push the Red Button, I think. But I think that's it. I think it's second to bottom for me.
Here. Actually,
maybe.
No, I'm going to put it above Push the Red Button. I almost didn't because Push the Red Button actually does have a narrative.
I know, that's why I was like, at first my instinct was like, this is the worst one. It's pretty close.
If it weren't for the sheer annoyance of Push the Red Button and everything that comes along with it, then this one would be below it.
I know, it's like, what a dilemma. But no, yeah, I agree. Push the Red Button is
Although
worse.
I will say I did get emotional at the ending when Chris was doing the wrap up and she said like 30 years and I was thinking like, oh my gosh, think about like all these people, especially for Chris, because she's been in more episodes than anyone else. And it's so crazy and it's so great. And I just got like really emotional when she said like, here's to 30 more years. And then I sent Devin a message saying, hey, Odyssey was just renewed for another 30 years. Which I thought was funny because Comic-Con's going on this weekend. So,
well, SDCC is. I find it weird. I get
Yeah.
confused when people just say like Comic-Con, because I'm like, there's a
Fine.
billion of them.
I haven't heard any new Kingdom Hearts news yet. Oh, guess what? Guess what? For the first time ever, Kyrie's actually got her own official figurines.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
For rating this episode on our 5-point scale, I think I'm going to give this one a 1.7 out of 5.
I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. I did like how they updated the sketches. I really liked that because the alternative, which I thought was going to happen, was they were just going to be all rehashes and nothing new.
One of them
But I liked how it wasn't that.
Was newish. There was, there were several decent jokes. There was more than one decent joke.
I'm pretty sure lots of the stuff in the OT Action News one was reusing a past thing.
Reusing past what?
The OT Action News one. I'm pretty sure lots of that was just reused sketches too.
From what?
I can't remember, but I feel like I've heard it before.
I mean, there was general kind of like concepts in there, like when.
Also, Chuck Bolte played Joseph, and that made me really emotional.
I thought about that.
That made me so emotional, and I was just like, oh, I wish we had Mary's voice actress
Grayson's line about like, oh, me, my name, oh, me, my name. When he was like, "Me, you want me to go in and see Jesus?" was very like reminiscent of Eugene and Back to Bethlehem and stuff. But no, I don't think there was really any reused content in there. But yeah, lots of it was just, there was so much just like, hey guys, get it? We're on a cruise. Get it? He was the Get in the Show winner, and that's what he's talking about. Get it? We have books.
Except for like,
buy our
instead
books.
of nudging you with their shoulder, like in your arm, it's like in your face.
Yeah, hard. It was like,
they're hitting you hard.
Okay, guys, we get it. You're really playing up.
You look visibly uncomfortable.
I was like, I get it. You're buttering up the fan service for the crowd here, but we are the ones who have to keep on listening to it, or not.
Part of me is like, I want to go to an AIO live show so bad, but the other part's like, I'll have to sit there and think the entire time I spent money on this.
I know, that's the thing. It would be such an experience to get to like see these people that we've met and known online in real life. But there's the fact that I know I'm probably not going to enjoy the content of the episode itself of the live show, because they're almost like never not bad.
You pay not because you want to actually see it, but because you want the experience.
Yeah.
And to see the voice actors in person, maybe get them to sign something.
Kids who are having a good time, and I'm going to have to pretend to laugh and stuff. And it's like,
I wouldn't even pretend to laugh. Honestly, I would not give them that. I'm not good at pretending.
If they were like, hey, this live show, we're going to be just performing a regular broadcast episode, and it's like a good episode. If they're like, if we're doing like Telemachus or Charlotte or Take It on Trust, even, I don't care. No, not Take It on Trust, but like just a regular episode that I already know that is not like a live, written to be a live show, I'd be like, great, sign me up for it.
Honestly, yeah. I want them to do that one day. I want them to just do a live show that's like OAC level show, where it's like, you don't necessarily have to listen to this. You're not going to miss out on anything.
You mean the live shows?
The normal albums, like how the live shows are, except for it's good. So, yeah. Yeah.
So this has been part 2 of our What's the Deal with Live Shows analysis discussion video. Yeah, that's our episode for today. That was another long one. But hey, in fairness, we talked about a groundbreaking emotional episode, and then we talked about an episode that's 3 times the length of a normal one. So what are we doing next time, Victoria? We already talked about it multiple times throughout this.
We're going to be doing our anniversary episode, our 5-year anniversary episode. Mm-hmm. And we are going to be talking about our each individual top 5 episodes of Odyssey.
Yes.
Which, hopefully, the episodes that we cover haven't been ones we've covered before. Although I guess if they have been, it will be a very short episode.
We can still rehash why we like them, and most of the reviews we've done.
I mean, we will.
Were a
It's
long
just we
time
won't have to
ago.
go into that much detail.
We have new thoughts, and most people probably haven't seen all these episodes because we've done 150 now. So
honestly, a lot of the episodes on my list we have reviewed, but I think that's because lots of the time we try to
review ones we like,
episodes we like,
yeah,
instead of ones we hate.
So we have
Sometimes we
something to talk
review
about.
ones we hate.
Well, we just want to avoid talking about ones we don't have any strong feelings about, because then there's nothing interesting to say.
I know we're not really supposed to ask each other what our episodes are, but please tell me you didn't put I Slap Floor on your top 5 list.
I wouldn't. I don't
Okay.
mind the episode, but I'm not like a huge fan of it, Victoria.
I know.
I don't know
I
where you
didn't
get this
figure you
idea.
Still, I don't know. Maybe it's just like because I dislike it so strongly, anyone liking it at all just comes off as so unusual to me.
Okay. So that's what we're doing next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I have been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And here's to another 30 years. And also another 30 years of Odyssey, too. So I was talking about our podcast.
Don't say that.
That was a joke.
No, I plan to be dead in 30 years from now.
Oh, that's depressing. Please tell me you don't mean that.
No, but I don't plan to be doing this podcast 30 years from now, probably.
That's probably good. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.